I felt the beeping before I heard it, a mechanical rhythm tethering me to the room. My chest ached, not just from the incision but from something deeper, something tearing. Then I heard his voice, "My son, too close, too careless." "He won't remember any of this," he muttered. "Just keep him comfortable till we get the paperwork done." Jason's laugh followed, sharp and cold. "He's useless now, Dad. Might as well get moving before probate slows everything." My eyelids stayed shut, but my mind, it burned awake. I've built everything they have. Paid their tuition, cossened mortgages, bylaid them out of mistakes too big for their character. And here I was hooked up to machines, treated like a dying obstacle, like property waiting to be transferred. I heard a chair scrape, then Jason again. "We should check with the bank first, see what's in his name directly. If we need to, we can say he's not of sound mind." My son didn't object, he didn't even pause. I'd spent 72 years being the man people turned to. Now I was an inconvenience with a pulse. I let the silence between their words tighten around my throat. Then the door opened, closed, their voices faded. I opened my eyes. The ceiling tiles above me looked no different, but everything else had changed. They thought I was gone already, that my value died with my strength. I wish someone had warned me that love has an expiration date in some families, measured not in years, but in usefulness. The nurse entered with soft footsteps. "You're awake," she said gently. I turned my head, voice a rasp. "I need a phone." She blinked. "Are you in pain?" "Yes," I said, "but not the kind you can fix." I asked for my lawyer. No delay, no questions. I told her to bar visitors for the night. She hesitated. "Your son said." "No visitors," I repeated. She nodded, eyes kind but unsure. When she left, I stared at the IV bag beside me. I thought about my wife, her last Christmas alive, the cabin she loved, the savings we spent decades building. Jason called me useless, but the truth was I'd just been too useful for too long, too generous, too trusting. And now they were about to learn that old men can die with quiet dignity, or live long enough to write a different ending. That night I didn't sleep. I waited in silence for Daniel's knock. And when it finally came, I whispered 3 words I hadn't said in years. "Take them out." The next morning they arrived like clockwork, right after breakfast, just before rounds. My son held a bouquet of tired daisies, wilting at the edges. Jason trailed behind him, already scrolling through his phone, thumbs tapping like I was background noise. "Dad," my son said with a too bright smile, "you're looking stronger today." I nodded, not bothering to speak. Jason didn't even glance up. "We've been talking about what comes next," my son continued, settling into the chair beside my bed. "Recovery plans, maybe a rehab facility for a while, somewhere quiet." I looked at him, really looked. His eyes didn't match his voice. They were flat, focused on outcomes, not concern. Jason finally spoke. "I found a place, clean, private, close to the city." He looked up just long enough to flash me a photo on his phone, a brochure. Not a home, a facility. The folder tucked under his arm caught my eye. Cream-colored, thick, official. They thought I didn't notice, or didn't care. I offered a thin smile. "Sounds like you've planned everything." Jason smirked. "We just want what's best for everyone." Everyone, I thought, meaning you. They stayed for 15 minutes. 15 minutes of staged concern, of Jason scrolling, of my son checking his watch. "We're grabbing coffee," my son said finally. "Back soon." I watched them leave, then closed my eyes, not to rest, to steady my breath. The door clicked again, softer this time. Maria, my nurse, walked in and adjusted the IV. "Your family," she said gently. "They were at the front desk earlier, asking about medical power of attorney, if you'd already signed something." My stomach turned, not from the medication, from the confirmation. "Did they leave anything here?" I asked. She shook her head. Not yet. I opened my palm slowly. Maria, do you have a pen and some paper? She paused, reading something in my face, then nodded. I'll get it. She returned with a clipboard and a clean sheet of hospital stationery. I stared at it for a long time before touching the pen. I thought about the trust I'd built, the accounts I'd set up in Jason's name, the cabin deed still sitting in my safe. All of it placed in hands that no longer held love for me. I began to write. My hand trembled, but my mind was sharp, sharper than they remembered. Every sentence poured out like a pulse, not of anger but of clarity. I wrote names. I drew lines through old ones. I circled others quietly, defiantly. When Maria returned to check my vitals, I didn't stop writing. Because while they sipped lattes in the hallway, I was rewriting the ending. Not out of vengeance, out of self-respect. The door opened just after 11. Visiting hours had long passed, but Maria let him through without a word. Daniel stepped in with his coat still dusted from the cold, briefcase in hand, and the kind of look you only wear when you've watched too many people be gutted by their own blood. He didn't speak at first, just pulled the chair closer and sat by my bed, eyeing the monitors, the wires, the thinning skin on my arms. "You look like hell," he muttered. I gave him half a smile, better than what I heard yesterday. He waited. I told him everything, every word Jason said, every silence my son let sit heavy in the room. I repeated the joke about keeping me comfortable, the way they hovered like vultures waiting for breath to slow. Daniel's jaw tightened. Then he opened his case, pulled out a thick binder and laid it on the tray beside me. "Last version of the trust," he said, flipping pages. "Still names Jason as primary heir. Your wife, she believed he'd grow into a better man. Thought college would round off the edges." "He's grown into exactly what she feared," I said. Daniel nodded, no surprise in his face. "You want to change it?" "Yes." "Are you sure? This isn't the kind of thing you do out of anger, and once it's done." "It's not anger," I said. "It's clarity." He handed me a fresh form. I couldn't lift the pen well, so I dictated. Jason's name, remove it, all of it. Assets, property, the cabin. Any replacement. Charity for veterans, and my granddaughter if she'll still speak to me. He scribbled quickly, making notes in the margins, eyes flicking between the form and my face. Halfway through, my chest fluttered a sharp wave, like a bird panicking in a cage. The monitor beside me beeped loud, jagged. Daniel stood. "Do we need to stop?" "No," I whispered, "just write." He sat again, pen racing. "Include the apartment, the lake bonds, the pension, everything. You don't want to hold anything back." I looked at the ceiling, at the same stain I'd counted 100 times since the heart attack. If I die tomorrow, I want to die knowing I didn't fund my own disrespect. The monitor steadied. Daniel placed the final draft in front of me. I took the pen. My hand trembled, but the signature came out clean. And just like that, Jason's future, the one he thought was owed, vanished in a single shaking line of ink. Daniel packed his briefcase. "You sure you're ready for the fallout?" he asked. I was ready the second he called me useless. I watched them walk in like mourners, soft voices, forced smiles, arms full of flowers. The kind of flowers people bring when they've already made peace with your passing. Jason placed the vase on the windowsill, adjusting it like he was staging a photo shoot. "Grandpa," he said, voice syrupy, "you scared us." He reached for my hand and squeezed it too hard, as if testing if I still had bones. "You're looking better," my son added, taking the chair closest to the door. He didn't look me in the eye. "Strong as ever," Jason grinned. "We've been talking to a few care facilities, just to make sure you get the best rest after all this." I said nothing, just let the silence stretch. The kind that used to make Jason squirm when he was little. Now he filled it himself. "There's one right near the lake," he continued. Big windows, quiet halls, real peaceful vibe, you'd like it. I did like the lake always had, which made me wonder how stupid they thought I was, that they'd wrap exile in a view I loved and call it kindness. I glanced at the folder Jason tried to hide under his coat, the same one from the other day. He noticed. Just some paperwork, he said quickly. Discharge prep insurance forms. My son cleared his throat. We just want to make sure you're taken care of, no surprises. I smiled, slow, tired, just convincing enough. Jason patted my shoulder like I was already halfway gone. Don't worry, we've got everything under control. They didn't stay long, just enough to feel good about themselves. Jason kissed my forehead like a priest giving last rites. My son lingered a moment longer, then turned the light off as they left, forgetting I was still awake. The door clicked shut. I looked at the flowers, white lilies and pale carnations, a bouquet chosen for aesthetics, not meaning. One petal was already browning at the edge. The stems slouched in the vase like they'd given up trying to stand tall. Just like their affection, wilting before my eyes. I pressed the bed's recline button until I was upright, reached for the side drawer. Maria had left the pen and notepad there, just as I asked. I opened to the next blank page and kept writing. Not a goodbye. A record. The names of people who had already started planning my absence. The words they used when they thought I wasn't listening. The facility they hoped would erase me before they will read out anything inconvenient. They wanted to bury me in comfort before I was even cold. But I wasn't cold yet. And I had one more thing left to give. My story, written in ink, while I was still here to hold the pen. The door creaked open slow, hesitant. I turned my head expecting another nurse, but it was Emily. She didn't speak at first, just walked in with a bouquet, sunflowers, lilacs, and those little white ones her grandmother used to love. No cell phone in her hand, no fake cheer in her voice, just quiet. She sat beside me, her fingers trembling as she placed the vase on the table. I didn't want to come, she whispered, voice barely above a breath. But I couldn't, not after what I heard last night. I watched her carefully, her hands clenched in her lap, knuckles pale. We were at dinner, Dad, Jason, Aunt Liz, she swallowed hard. They were laughing, Grandpa, laughing. Jason said you probably wouldn't make it to Christmas, that it would simplify everything. My chest tightened, not from the stitches, from the sharp, blunt cruelty of it. I told them it wasn't right, she said. I told Dad he was being heartless. He just looked at me like I was stupid, said I didn't understand business matters. I didn't speak right away, just watched her wipe tears that slipped down her cheek, fast and ashamed. I'm sorry, she added. I needed you to know. I reached out, slow but steady, and took her hand. You've said enough, I murmured. Enough to remind me who still has a heart. She squeezed my fingers hard. They think I'm already gone, I said, but they forget what a little time and a little clarity can do. Emily reached into her bag, pulled out the documents Daniel left me that morning. The revised trust, the secondary notarization papers, the ones that needed one last signature and a witness. I brought these too, she said, just in case you were ready. I looked at her, really looked, the freckles across her nose, the way she sat with her spine straight even when she was afraid. She had her grandmother's steadiness and her fire. I nodded once, let's finish it. She guided my hand, steadying the pen when it shook. I signed every page, line by line, while the machines hummed softly around us. Emily initialed where she needed to. Then she folded the papers carefully and slipped them back into the envelope. I touched her wrist before she stood. This stays between us, I said, for now. She met my eyes. I understand. As she turned to go, I caught her reflection in the darkened window, upright, proud, carrying the weight of something sacred. The fresh flowers filled the room with soft scent, not of mourning but of something returning, something still alive. When the door closed behind her, I didn't feel alone. I felt remembered. They weren't expecting to see me upright. I shuffled down the hallway with slow determination, my IV long gone, my steps still stiff but mine. When I turned the corner into the visitor lounge, Jason almost dropped his phone. "You're already walking," he blinked. I let the silence stretch before answering. "Guess useless old men don't break so easy." He forced a laugh. My son joined in, that tight, uncomfortable chuckle people use when they can't tell if you're joking or warning them. My doctor appeared just behind me, clipboard in hand. "Vitals look good. We'll discharge you by end of week, Mr. Halston. You've made remarkable progress." I nodded, then looked at Jason. "You hear that? Looks like I'll be making it to Christmas after all." Jason shifted his weight. "Of course, that's great news, Grandpa." "Really lifts the burden off everyone," my son added quickly. "We can focus on your long-term comfort now." I tilted my head. Funny, I thought we were already doing that. They stayed 10 more minutes. Jason scrolled. My son asked vague questions about my daily care, pushing the subject of financial planning in casual tones. I kept my answers short. When they left, I asked Maria to wheel me down to the hospital's notary office. Everything Daniel and I had finalized, the revised trust, the property protection clauses, the clause about power of attorney only activating upon cognitive decline, had been officially processed the day before. Today, I was here for something else. A wire transfer, quiet, clean, from one of my older mutual funds liquidated for just enough to make an impact. Emily's name went on the receiving end. A gift, not a warning. By the time I was back in my room, my son had already left a voicemail. "Hey Dad, just wondering if we could chat soon about some of your financials. You know, just so we're not in the dark. It's important to keep everyone in the loop." I didn't reply. The next morning he visited again, alone. He brought a smoothie. "I figured you'd want something different than hospital coffee," he said, placing it by my bed. "So, listen, I wanted to talk about your portfolio, just a check-in." I sipped the smoothie, mango sweet with a hint of obligation. "Funny," I said, "I don't remember inviting you to my financial planning sessions." He blinked. "Dad, come on, we're family. And yet you keep calling my health a burden." His jaw tightened. "I never said." "I know what you didn't say," I interrupted, "which tells me more." He leaned forward. "Why are you being so cold?" I looked him in the eye. "That's the point of a recovery, son, to surprise people." As he left, I watched the swing of the door. And I smiled, not from bitterness, from clarity. Jason didn't want to come. That much was clear from the second he walked through the door. He glanced at the dinner table, already set, and muttered, "Didn't know we were going formal." I smiled, ignoring the jab. "You used to love when we had roast on Sundays." Emily was already in the kitchen helping me plate the food, humming softly. My son stood awkwardly near the bookshelf, eyeing a framed photo of his mother. He didn't pick it up, didn't say her name. We sat down, the four of us. It looked almost like a family again. Emily passed the potatoes. Jason scrolled through his phone, barely pretending to eat. My son cleared his throat. "So, Dad, you're looking well." "Better every day," I replied. "Doctors said I might outlive my own accountant." Jason chuckled dryly. "Guess that means we'll finally inherit the stress, huh?" I set my fork down. "You might want to check your assumptions before making plans." My son frowned. "What does that mean?" "It means," I said evenly, "I've taken care of everything, the trust, the properties, the businesses, all secured, all updated, legally airtight." Jason's face went still. "Updated." I nodded, reviewed, rewritten, reassigned. He pushed back from the table, wiping his mouth with too much force. "Excuse me a second," he said, already reaching for his phone as he stepped onto the porch. We could hear his voice rising through the glass. He's bluffing. No, I don't know what lawyer he's using. Daniel, maybe. That old guy. Because he's acting too calm, that's why. Emily and I sat in silence. My son stared at his plate. I told you not to rush things, he muttered. Rush? I asked quietly. I had a heart attack. You had an opportunity. He didn't meet my eyes. Emily reached for my hand under the table. I squeezed hers gently. Jason stormed back in, trying to look composed. I think we should revisit the trust details with a neutral party, just to be fair. I looked at him. Fairness wasn't your concern when I was unconscious. He stiffened, then sat. We're family. And families, I said, don't gamble on someone else's death. The room held its breath. Then Emily stood and began clearing the plates. I sat back, watching the tension crack the false politeness they'd worn like masks. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't afraid of what they'd try to take. Because there was nothing left for them to take. Only the truth, and that was already delivered. The dining room held a quiet hum, silverware, soft conversation, the clink of glass. For once, everyone showed up early. My son, Jason, Emily, even a few extended relatives. They all smelled something was coming. Maybe it was the way Daniel sat beside me, crisp suit, leather briefcase by his feet. I cleared my throat. Thank you all for coming tonight. I have something important to share. Jason rolled his eyes just enough for me to notice. My son folded his napkin slowly, like bracing for impact. I looked at Daniel. He nodded. I've made final updates to my estate, I began. The trust has been restructured. The businesses, the property, and all remaining assets will now be directed into the Harold Wexler Foundation, a charitable trust supporting single fathers, veterans, and elder care initiatives. I turned slightly toward Emily. Emily has agreed to oversee its operations going forward. Jason's fork clattered against his plate. Wait, what? I didn't flinch. You heard me. He leaned forward, eyes wide. You're giving everything to a foundation, run by her. Daniel spoke, voice calm but firm. It's already done, legally filed and signed. No assets remain under the prior designation. Mr. Wexler has left a letter for both of you, one each. Jason's hands balled into fists. You can't do that. This isn't right. I'm family. I looked at him, really looked. For the first time in years, I saw not the child I once held, but the man who whispered about my death beside a hospital bed. You stopped being family when you started treating me like a transaction. My son spoke up now, voice low. Dad, be reasonable. You're upset. This is about hurt feelings, not business. No, I said, steady. This is about legacy, about what survives when I don't. You were planning a future without me in it. Emily was helping me live the one I still had. Jason stood so quickly his chair scraped against the hardwood. You're going to regret this. Daniel folded his hands. That's not how trust law works. Jason looked to his father, expecting backup, but my son remained still, eyes cast down. He didn't speak, didn't move. Jason scoffed, unbelievable. He grabbed his coat and stormed out, the door slamming hard enough to rattle the china. No one followed, not even his father. Silence returned, heavy, full. Emily reached across the table and placed her hand over mine. I exhaled slowly, the kind of breath you release when a weight finally lifts, the kind you don't know you've been holding for decades. I held the envelope for a long time before sealing it. The paper inside was smooth, but the words written on it had taken days to come out of me. I didn't write it in anger. That part had long passed. I started with the truth, the kind Jason wouldn't expect. You were 6 when I taught you how to skip stones on Lake Marvin, I wrote. You were quiet back then, thoughtful. You used to tell me I was your favorite person. I believed you. I paused, then wrote the next line. I heard what you said in that hospital room. No flourish, no metaphor, just that. I was awake. You laughed and called me useless. You said I'd served my purpose, that it was time to get the paperwork done. And your father, he didn't say a word. I folded the paper once. My hands didn't shake this time. Inheritance isn't a reward, Jason. It's a reflection, a mirror of who you were when you thought no one was watching or listening. I didn't expect him to understand, not really, but I wanted him to remember. You could have had both wealth and the respect of a man who loved you once, but one doesn't come without the other. That was the final line. I signed it with just my first name, not Grandpa, not love always, just me. I sealed the envelope, placed it in the outgoing mail slot, and walked back to my chair. The air in the living room felt lighter, like something had been lifted. Later that afternoon, Emily arrived. She let herself in like always, carrying a grocery bag with soup, crackers, and a book of poetry I didn't ask for but welcomed. "Hey, Grandpa," she said, kicking off her shoes. "I brought you the mint tea you like, the real kind, not that knockoff junk." She placed the tin on the table, then flopped onto the couch beside me. I looked at her. "You know this house feels full again." She tilted her head. "It's just us." "Exactly." She smiled, reached for the old photo album on the shelf. We flipped through pages, me holding her as a toddler, her first piano recital, summer afternoons at the cabin. Laughter bubbled between us, quiet, effortless. She didn't ask about the letter, and I didn't bring it up. Not everything needed to be spoken. The fireplace crackled gently. Outside, the light dimmed into dusk, casting long shadows across the rug. Emily tucked her feet beneath her, sipping her tea, humming a tune from her childhood. I leaned back, watching the embers glow. The boy who called me useless would never understand what he'd lost. But the girl who stayed, she'd inherited something far more lasting. And for the first time in years, I wasn't waiting for the phone to ring. The cabin sits the same way it always has, a quiet wooden heart against the lake. The water moves slow, steady, like it's forgotten everything that's ever happened to me. I breathe in pine and distance, the air sharp with memory. Months have passed since the will was read, since Jason stormed out of that dining room. He never came back, not once, but I've heard enough through whispers. He sold his car, burned through his savings, still chasing something he thinks was stolen. The irony, of course, is that I gave him every chance not to lose it. The foundation sign gleams by the entrance to town. The Wexler Trust for Dignity and Care. My name isn't large, just a small engraving beneath the logo. That's how I wanted it, not a monument, just a reminder. That dignity can't be stolen. It has to be lived. Inside, Emily and her team run programs for elder care and veterans, two things close to my heart. I visit sometimes, not to interfere, just to listen. The laughter, the stories, the life being built out of what once was betrayal. This morning, Emily knocks before entering, even though she never needs to. She's carrying a thermos and that familiar smile. "Still making tea the old way," she teases, pouring me a cup. "You really did it, Grandpa." I look out the window at the lake. "No," I say, "we did." She sits beside me, sipping quietly. The foundation sign glows gold in the fading sunlight. Somewhere in the trees, I swear I hear the sound of my wife's voice, that soft hum she used to make when she was proud of something. Emily reaches over and straightens the blanket on my lap, still fussing like her grandmother did. "You know," she says, "Jason sent a message last week. Just one line, 'Hope you're well.'" I nod. "Then maybe there's hope for him yet." She smiles faintly. "Maybe." Silence settles between us, but it's not heavy anymore. It's gentle, earned. The lake reflects the sunset, fire over glass. I think of the night I heard Jason call me useless, and I can almost laugh. Because this life rebuilt from ashes came from that moment. I whisper toward the water, to the ghost of the woman who saw all this coming. "They called me useless, but look what useless built." Emily looks at me, puzzled. What did you say? Nothing, I tell her. Just talking to someone who'd understand. She leans her head on my shoulder, and for the first time in years I feel it legacy. Alive, breathing, warm.